Let's talk about this. Hello friends and welcome to Figure Study, where today we are taking a look at Studio Series Bumblebee movie Brawn. I will say up front, I did actually get and apply the Reprolabel set to this figure. I just didn't make a video on it before actually getting the stickers and applying them, so oh well. But when I talk about the deco and details and stuff like that, I will point out what's, what I applied myself, what doesn't come stock on the figure. I will also say up front, the Reprolabels for this guy, it is a very good set. I think it's very, very worth getting. Now, Brawn. This vehicle mode is a little strange. I do actually like it though. I think we all know at this point that when Hasbro was designing the vehicle modes for these figures, like they had the models for the characters in the movie, but none of them had designed vehicle modes. So they just kind of had to figure out what can we make this turn into based on the details that we have and the engineering that we can put into them. And some of the stuff they came up with was a little weird. Studio Series Soundwave definitely has a bizarre vehicle mode, which I don't hate, it's just weird. But then you've got stuff like Ratchet and Brawn, where it comes together really nicely. I know I said this vehicle mode is weird, but it actually does come together. It's very cohesive. It's got a pretty decent shape. Like, you can actually tell what the intent is behind it based on the silhouette. If you want, you can give it the little drill on front, or you can remove the drill and just have it be like a little bubble van thing. The gun storage on the top is not the best, but it's okay for what it is. And without it, you've got this big old void on top that clearly shows the top of the robot head. Though, in fairness, this is a Cybertronian vehicle mode, so it's probably not that necessary that it's like super enclosed and doesn't show any robot bits. Also, I actually like how virtually everything on this is robot bits, but because it's Cybertronian, you don't really notice that. My initial thoughts when getting this figure was that I just didn't really care for the vehicle mode with the drill on the front, but after adding the Reprolabels and messing around with it a little bit more, and also the fact that it actually rolls pretty well even with the drill attached, like, there's no real impediment there. I've definitely come around on the drill bit. I think, it's not necessary, but I do think it's kind of fun how it adds just a little bit more, I guess, personality to the vehicle mode. That personality being, what if a potato had wheels? Or possibly, what if the Homer from that one episode of The Simpsons was designed by somebody who actually knew what they were doing? But yeah, it's a pretty cohesive, all things considered, Cybertronian vehicle mode. I like it quite a bit. I love the really big windshield thing that doesn't really need to exist because this is just a robot turned into a vehicle. It's like no one's going to be sitting in there, but it's a nice detail. And of course, it's covered in molded detail and also covered in stickers, a lot of which I will talk about more when we go into the robot mode, but the ones that are particular for this mode is you get some kind of gunmetal-y stickers for the nose section of the vehicle, just in front of the window and just behind the window. You also get what are obviously headlights, and then around the back, there are also 4 stickers that act as sort of like taillights. And what I think is really fun about the way these stickers work, the way that they're placed, is it actually does a pretty decent job of kind of disappearing when you go into the robot mode. Like, the stickers are still there, obviously, but you just kind of don't see those details in robot mode, so it's kind of cool how the stickers call them out in vehicle mode, but you don't really have to worry about them in robot mode. Oh, also, there are silver stickers, shiny silver stickers, that go on the blades of the drill, which add a little bit more pop to it, I think. And one last thing, which is kind of an interesting detail, which is a little weird, but I do appreciate it. The sticker set also adds a small circular sticker that goes into the hole on the right side of the vehicle where the front section is joined to the back section, because it's essentially designed to act as almost like a detail mirror to the screw that you get on the left side, which is kind of neat, actually. So, Brawn's vehicle mode, actually pretty neat. It is kind of small, though. And I mean, it's a movie Studio Series Deluxe, so that's not too big a surprise. But this is a pretty tiny vehicle mode. Definitely smaller than your average Deluxe. Smaller than Ratchet in vehicle mode. It's small, but neat, as I've said. And really, that smallness isn't as big a problem for Brawn specifically because of the way he's engineered, which we'll see when we get to the transformation. It's a very straightforward and simple transformation, so because it's a small figure and the transformation is very simple, not in a bad way, but just, no extra weird frills or obnoxious stuff like we had to deal with for the Volkswagen Bumblebee Deluxe that we got in Studio Series. It's extremely breezy to transform, fun to transform, and you get some really nice results, so the fact that it's so tiny just kind of doesn't matter, at least in terms of the fun factor of the transformation. So, moving on to that. As I said, the transformation is very straightforward, but that doesn't mean it's not actually surprisingly clever in a lot of ways. Like the fact that the entire lower portion of the car is his legs that are weirdly kind of folded inside out. That leg transformation is only a couple of very basic steps, most of which include just moving the waist and hips around, so you're not even really transforming anything, you're just repositioning it. But the way that those shins flip around and invert 180 degrees to come together to make a cohesive leg is really cool. Likewise, getting the arms out of the way, you just get to fold the extra wheels up into the back, fold up the head, close everything off, and it just cinches together so nicely and so cleanly, which we will talk about again in a minute, but it is a very cool transformation that is very, very easy to do and works so well. I mean, the thought behind this is kind of amazing because there's stuff going on with this little deluxe that I've praised on bigger, much more expensive masterpiece-style third-party figures. Like Cyber Factory's Starstorm has that really cool thing where the nose cone folds up into the torso and then the head comes down on this plank and the plank pegs into the kibble that's being stored on the inside, so it both cleans up the kibble and acts as a solid locking point for the head. That's some really clever engineering. Brawn does something kind of similar to that on a much smaller scale, where you flip up the head and the head itself, the platform that it's on, doesn't necessarily lock into place, but the wheels that you fold up into the back act as a platform to hold that thing in place. So the head cannot tuck back into the torso because of the way it transforms. It's really smart. And what we're left with is a really, really nice Brawn. Like, I don't care about Brawn at all. He's like beyond Z-list in terms of characters in my mind in the G1 cartoon. He may be more popular or more active in the show than that, but for me personally, Brawn is below Skids in terms of characters I normally think about when I think about the G1 cartoon. But this figure is so cool, it makes me care about Brawn in at least this one instance. And I also like how this design, which, I mean, credit to the original designers for the Bumblebee movie because they designed the characters first, not the toys, but this design is very Cybertronian, and it does kind of merge the Cybertronian G1 and live-action, not great movie designs in terms of the screen stuff, especially the early stuff. But anyway, it kind of merges that G1 and live-action movie into this Cybertronian design for Brawn that it works. It works as both the live-action movie design and the G1 design, because this is, I don't know Brawn, I don't care about Brawn, as I've said, but this is Brawn as f***. It's got the green legs and the green arms hovering around this orangey, brownish-orange, whatever, muted color palette torso. He's got the big silver artillery shell-shaped head, let's say. This is very Brawn, and they did such a great job with it. He is covered in lots of little details, and yes, there are lots of stickers on this guy, which I will talk about in a sec. But even without the stickers, there are some nice details here. A lot of the details that you see that have this kind of scuffed metal look, those are stickers, but those parts are originally covered in like a gunmetal paint. Really all the stickers do is add a little bit of a scratchy texture to that section. It doesn't change the color per se. But I do like what the stickers add. Out of the box, no stickers, Brawn still looks great, but with the stickers, he looks incredible. And again, this is speaking as someone who does not give a crap about Brawn. I love the kind of weathered metal texture that those stickers add. It kind of makes it look like you'd expect out of the Transformer named Brawn. And from what I know about Brawn, he is the kind of guy who would jump into a fight and get scratched up. There's the darker green on this guy that are, like all the darker green on this figure is Reprolabels, and I love those details because they just add a little bit of extra visual interest to parts that were already pretty visually interesting, but I like that two-tone green effect. It just separates out things a little bit better, but like keeps the same general color palette, and it looks really nice. There are also a surprising number of stickers that didn't seem to have a purpose, at least going by the instructions on toy hacks, but I figured out a lot of them are supposed to be used to cover up pins, which is weird. I like it, but it's weird. I haven't seen that happen with toy hack sticker sets before. Granted, I don't get a ton of them, but this is the first one I've encountered that includes stickers specifically so that you can slap them over pins that you see on certain parts of the figure to help them kind of blend in better. It's completely not necessary, but I really appreciate their inclusion. And then, of course, we get to that chest, and the chest stuff is really nice, too. I mean, I love the overall shape and torso design of this figure to begin with, but having these green and silvery stripes going down the sides just kind of add a little bit more interest and help to accent the contours of that really interesting torso shape. There's some extra detail stickers you can add to the midsection. I also added the Autobot logo. He includes multiple options for Autobot logos, but I included the greenish, whitish one, which I just thought worked really well and complemented the color scheme. And then you get this nice shiny silver strip that goes along the top of the head, which again, not necessary, but it just accents the shape and design of the head to make it pop a little bit more, which is really what this entire sticker set does. It just makes the figure pop a little bit more, and I really appreciate that. You know what else I appreciate about this figure is the fact that he has absolutely no kibble. This is as we previously established, rather small Studio Series Deluxe, but he transforms into a perfect, clean little round boy. More of this, please, because this is amazing. Like, you turn around to the back and you see the, I guess you could say, driver's section of the vehicle up along his back, but it's not actually kibble, it's just his back. And because of the way this thing splits apart and comes together, when you look along that seam line where the two halves of the torso come together, the molding and the shape actually just completes the torso. So there is zero kibble on this guy. His back is completely clean. I love Studio Series Ratchet. That is my favorite live-action Studio Series figure that I've gotten so far. But Brawn does an incredible job with the engineering. Looking at the head, as I said, it is very G1 referential because of that helmet. That helmet absolutely makes it. That is the most Brawn head shape. Like, there's no other Transformer that I'm aware of that has that head shape. And if there is, they're like a repaint of Brawn, basically. So yeah, the helmet absolutely does all the work of selling this as Brawn. The face is fine. It's a live-action movie face, so it's basically this kind of weird, unsettling, humanoid-looking face with a ton of mechanical details that make it look kind of like a mummy that's made out of pistons. And I'm not the biggest fan of that general design aesthetic in terms of the movie stuff. I think it works much better with characters that have mouth plates, but it's fine, and he's small enough that the slightly disturbing nature of the face sculpt doesn't really bother me at all. So I will say I do appreciate the fact that they painted the teeny tiny little eyes on his face in this really nice blue, and that's really tiny, but I like it, and it also really helps to make those eyes stand out in that sea of gunmetal and silver. Now, in terms of articulation, the head is on a swivel, so we can look left and right, but cannot look up and down. The arms do go all the way around. They can go out to almost 90. The shoulders are ball jointed, but the ball joint really just works as more of a universal hinge in the sense that it's pretty much only useful for the forward and back in and out motion on the shoulder, but you do get a dedicated bicep swivel. And the elbows, due to the transformation, are double jointed, but the transformation doesn't actually require using the double joint to curl in. It actually is used to offset the arms, so that added bonus of articulation is almost in a way not a product of the transformation, but it works really, really well. You get a waist swivel, and because of the nature of the transformation and how the entire lower body has to kind of swing up to properly align for the vehicle mode, you kind of get what could charitably be called an ab crunch, but it's like extremely minimal, so it's basically nothing. The legs can go forward to about 90, not quite 90 going backwards because of the way that the sculpt of the hip bumps into the upper torso, but if you rotate the torso out of the way slightly, then you can get the full 90 going back. Outward motion is limited due to the shape of the torso and the wheels being on the hips, but I think that's fine. You get a thigh rotation just above the knee, thank goodness. I hate it when they put the thigh rotation below the knees because that effectively makes the thigh rotation pointless. So you get a nice normal thigh rotation. You get a slightly over 90-degree knee bend, and the knee bend actually looks pretty good, especially considering how the legs transform. And you can also see when I bend the knee, there is a little bit of a detail sticker that you can add there too, which is kind of fun how it's hidden when the legs are straight. You can also wiggle the toes down due to the transformation, and he gets a pretty decent amount of ankle tilt inwards. If you really wanted to, you could unpeg the shins to move the feet around a little bit more, but it looks terrible and I don't understand why you do it. So yeah, this guy's articulation is pretty nice. I mean, it's relatively standard for a deluxe Transformers figure of the modern era, but I think it's pretty cool. As for the accessories, he gets his rifle, which is molded nicely, but it's not something I would call particularly interesting, but it's got some nice detail on it. It's also got a fair number of tiny peg holes on it, and that's because that peg on the back of the vehicle that was used to attach the gun in vehicle mode can also be used to store the gun in robot mode. You use the peg on the underside of the gun to store it in vehicle mode, and you can still use it in robot mode if you want, but it sits weird. But there's also a peg hole on the side of the gun, which is what's really supposed to be used for robot mode, and you peg that on the back, and that works much better as weapon storage for robot mode. He also comes with the drill thing, which I've seen in product shots and stuff. You can hold it like a sword club thing, I guess, and I don't like it at all. It kind of makes me wish that the hands could fold down or possibly unpeg and you could like replace the hand with the drill, because then it would make a little bit more sense to me as an accessory. But thankfully there is a tiny little peg hole on one side of the drill and a tiny little peg on top of the gun, so you can just peg the drill on top of the gun and make the gun look a little bit bigger. Though I will say I do wish that they'd actually put the peg on the bottom of the gun, because I feel like the drill would look neater if it was underslung. But oh well. Incidentally, if you want, you can also store the rifle with the drill on top of it on his back in robot mode with no problems. Now, just like vehicle mode, the robot mode is a little bit on the small side, or a lot of it on the small side. He's much, much smaller than the average deluxe. Also quite noticeably smaller than Ratchet, who himself was still kind of on the smaller side. I mean, Ratchet's not a terrible size, but he's a little bit smaller than the average, so having Brawn be even smaller than that, this is a small deluxe. But that doesn't bother me in the slightest because, as I said, while he's small, they pack a lot into this, and his size isn't a detriment in terms of playability because the transformation is so much simpler than some of the other Studio Series Deluxes that we've gotten. And I mean that all is a good thing. This guy is a fantastic figure. He's just a little small. And that about does it for Studio Series Brawn. I didn't really have him at the top of my list. I ended up getting him when I got Studio Series Ratchet because I thought Brawn looked kind of neat, and I was kind of like, yeah, let me get a bunch of Bumblebee movie figures, so I got the two of them together. And while I maintain that Ratchet is my favorite of the Bumblebee movie deluxes, well, really he's my favorite of all the Bumblebee movie Studio Series figures I've gotten so far, Brawn is an extremely close second. All of this may eventually change when I get RC. We'll see what happens. But for now, it's like Ratchet, Brawn is right just scraping the bottom of Ratchet, and then all the other ones kind of below that. But yeah, Brawn is fantastic, and if you get the option to get him, I absolutely would recommend it. He's also kind of already got a pretty muted color tone, so I feel like if this plastic randomly starts to yellow, which is a thing we all have to worry about now, it probably won't be noticeable. Definitely worth it, regardless of, you know, the size and whatnot. I feel like in Brawn's case, they make up for the size in terms of just overall engineering, articulation, and just the look at this guy. He's amazing. And he looks even better with the stickers, which is such a weird thing to say when it comes to a live-action movie figure in Reprolabels, but it's a really good set. Anyway, that is going to do it for Studio Series Brawn. I do very much enjoy this figure, as you can tell. But what do you all think of this guy? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.